The following program is brought to you in spooky vision. Be warned.
And the Republican nominee, SLIWA, founder of the Guardian Angels.
During the pandemic, we've seen an alarming uptick in shootings and murders. You have said in the past that you think stop and frisk, or as you say, stop, question, and frisk, can at times be an effective tool. But of course, as we saw it used during the Bloomberg administration, it was declared unconstitutional because it targeted young black and brown men. My question to you is, can you give me an example of when and how you think stop, question, and frisk can be an effective tool?
My opponent, Eric Adams, just this morning on the Breakfast Club said that he had met with gang leaders with bodies, Eric. That means gang leaders who killed and gang leaders who killed awaiting trial. Did you stop, question, and frisk them? Did you report that to the police? Could you tell us who those gang leaders were that you met with and which gangs? I think the public has a right to know for someone who declares himself to be the law and order candidate. Did you do that, Eric?
I think our question is, where is an example? What kind of an example would you see, Mr. SLIWA, where stop and frisk should be used?
Well, that's a perfect example. Known gang members.
I'll follow up and ask Mr. Adams his response to what you said about
known gang members. Those are the people you're going to stop and frisk because they're the ones in retaliatory shootings and drive-bys that are causing people to have to live in solitary confinement in their neighborhoods.
Mr. Adams.
Eric Adams, I'm a victim of gang violence. I was shot on the orders of John Gotti Sr. to the Gambino crime family, shot 5 times with hollow point bullets. Would you have sat down with the Gambino crime family and my shooter, Michael Leonardi, and sat down with them and tried to negotiate organized crime peace? That makes no sense at all. You haven't even met with the police unions. And you're meeting with gang leaders who are responsible for bodies. That means they killed people. And you meet with them and not with the police unions?
Let's move on to a related question, I think. Mayor de Blasio this year disbanded a controversial plainclothes unit, the anti-crime unit, because it was so aggressive. It was involved, of course, in the death of Eric Garner back in 2014. Mr. Adams, you have said that you want to bring that group back of undercover police officers, albeit you have said with many changes. Why do you want it back? Mr. SLIWA, do you think that this is a good idea to bring the unit back? 30 seconds.
We've got to keep it real here because the problem within the NYPD is they've gone from 5,500 detectives down to 3,500. They can't investigate all the cases. So you look in Brooklyn, where Eric Adams is still the borough president, 3 out of 4 of the gang gun cases are not being investigated. There are no arrests that have been made. And Eric, you haven't been at the gang sites. Mother Gaston Boulevard, 5 was shot drive-by, Brownsville. Roosevelt Homes, 8 was shot. You weren't there. Haitian mother shot twice by gangs in Crown Heights. You weren't there. And of all places, Carroll Gardens recently, you were not there for the shooting of that 16-year-old girl. All in Brooklyn, where crime and gang violence has exploded. You haven't done your job, Eric.
Mayor de Blasio announced plans to phase out Gifted and Talented program and replace it with something called Brilliant NYC, which is basically a program to train teachers, focus on teacher training. But the reality is that although the majority of the students of the largest district in the nation are blacks and Hispanics, their participation is less than a quarter in the program. Do you agree with Gifted and Talented? Would you keep it, sir?
I have a personal experience in that both of my youngest sons attempted to get into Gifted and Talented in Queens. There are about 65,000 children in kindergarten, only 2,500 available slots. I would expand the number of gifted and talented opportunities, especially in the inner city. I don't care if only 3 or 4 take the test and qualify. There should be gifted and talented in every school, and children who qualify, whether they're black or Hispanic or white or Asian or Southeast Asian, should be given that opportunity. But there's blowback now because Asians and Southeast Asians are doing so well. They beat out my 2 youngest sons for gifted and talented. They deserved it. There should be more gifted and talented slots so others, like my youngest sons and other sons and daughters, can have that same opportunity. We can do it. We can expand gifted and talented.
A follow-up question for you, Mr. SLIWA. Just today, an FDA panel authorized vaccination for the youngest children from 5 to 11 years of age. Would you support or require those children to be vaccinated in schools? And what about those families who don't want their children to be vaccinated? Would there be an option for those parents?
Well, I met many of those families yesterday as they marched from Metro Tech across the Brooklyn Bridge to City Hall to say, wait a second. We just got our children back into public schools. The religious schools and the parochial schools did a magnificent job last year having children in the classroom with their teachers. Finally, we get the children in the public schools, like my own sons, 3 sons. I have one in high school, junior high school, elementary school. And now all of a sudden, if they can't get the vaccine, or because of religious belief they can't get the vaccine, or the parents are not involved and decide the child should not have the vaccine, after a year and a half of playing Fortnite, of roadblocks, of not getting educated, we've deprived them of a year and a half of education, we're going to kick them out? We're going to expel them? What kind of compassion, what kind of care is that from a government that says, if you don't do what we say, you're out? Kicking kids out of school? No, absolutely not. Oh, and then wait a second. We're going to face firing civil servants this Friday. Hero police officers, firefighters, sanitation workers, healthcare workers who have already been told either you're vaccinated or you're fired.
All right,
teachers. This Friday, it is a disgrace. These people end these mandates, and when I'm mayor, I'm hiring them all back, and I'm giving them back pay. This is a violation of their rights. Get vaccinated, but more importantly, if you can't or won't, then you should. You absolutely should be able to get tested once a week.
What's your strategy about these mandates? And because whoever's elected could inherit thousands of critical workers and first responders who may have walked off their jobs because they refused to get inoculated.
Well,
how do you protect the city?
You speak with the credible messengers, the head of the unions, and come up with a resolution, and I believe we could accomplish that.
What about talking to your friend and teammate and the man who says he's your political advisor, the mayor, Bill de Blasio, and telling him to stop this madness? Do not fire these people on Friday. And again, they could have been tested once a week. If they couldn't be vaccinated or wouldn't be vaccinated, it was working with the police, it was working with the firefighters. Wouldn't you agree with me they should not be furloughed this Friday?
Curtis, I would agree with you that you should display a level of discipline. They laid out rules here, and you should try to show that. You're acting like my son when he was 4 years old. Show some discipline so we can get to all of these issues. You're interrupting, you're being disrespectful. Show a level of discipline. You want to be the mayor of the city of New York? Start with discipline.
Eric, show compassion, show care. Don't just be a robot. People are going to lose their jobs, their income. And when I'm mayor, I hire them back. I give them their full pay.
Thank you, Mr. SLIWA.
That's what I'm going to do.
Mr. SLIWA, your opponent has, at times, we've heard over the last couple of weeks, several times called you a clown. He has called you a Trump mini-me. I wanted to see your reaction to that, but I also, by your own admission, you faked crimes, a kidnapping, a robbery in the 90s. So why should voters in New York trust you?
Well, you know, it's interesting. He calls me a clown. I guess I'm Pagliacci right across the street. As you know, I could be in Lincoln Center. That's so beneath you, Eric Adams, especially after you wrote an op-ed piece praising the guardian angels. Did I make mistakes early on? Yes. And I've apologized for them. But talking about faking, you fake where you live, Eric Adams. We still don't know where you live. You live in Jersey, most people say. And then you blame a homeless person for your accounting problems with the IRS. For the second time, you've gotten in trouble for wrong filings, and you blame some homeless man that you had as your accountant. I hope you don't appoint him, if you get elected mayor, the budget director for the city of New York, because Bill de Blasio, your friend, has done enough damage to this city. I can't imagine why you wouldn't just take responsibility. Man up, Eric. Say, it's my responsibility, and I'd like to know where you actually live, because you keep faking that.
Mr. Adams, do you...
He faked that he found the gun. He hid money so he would not have to pay child support. That's not the city I want to live in.
That is scurrilous that you would say that. That is scurrilous that you would say that I hid money. I paid every every penny of my child support for my 3 sons, Anthony, Carter, and Hunter. How dare you bring my family into this? I haven't at all brought your family into your problems. Please, show some discipline, a modicum of civility. Keep our families out of this.
During the George Floyd protests, while most were peaceful, we did see some looting and some violence. First, the mayor was criticized for not doing enough, not having enough cops. Also, some accused officers of being overly aggressive. Right now, 65 officers are facing departmental charges. If you were mayor, how would you have handled that situation, sir?
I'll tell you this, the police are always getting criticized. I remember in that summer, when there was rioting, shooting, and looting in the streets after Mr. Floyd was killed in the streets of South Minneapolis. I noticed Eric Adams was not defending members of the police department who are under attack, who are being assaulted, Molotov cocktails being thrown into their vans, graffiti all over the city, F the police, all cops are bastards, all cops are bitches. Still, that graffiti is up in the city. Where was Curtis SLIWA? I was out in the streets with the Guardian Angels when Bill de Blasio, your partner, your teammate in that summer, was telling the cops to stand down. And Chief of Patrol Pachado said, no, 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 and quit. I stood with Pachado. You stood with de Blasio. I went into the streets. I got a broken jaw fighting off the looters and shooters with the Guardian Angels. We were the only people standing up to the mob. Where were you, Eric Adams? What were you doing? Were you defending the police then? The answer is not. You didn't defend the police at all. You abandoned them. I will never abandon the police department.
This pandemic has caused a recession, and we're still trying to climb out of it. New York City's budget, about $99 billion. That's bigger than the budgets of all but 4 of the states in the United States. The city cannot, of course, rely on federal bailouts to reopen all those closed storefronts that plague the city. We'll start with Mr. SLIWA. What's your strategy? Do you intend to raise taxes, and which ones? And if you have to cut the city's budget, what would be cut?
First and foremost, Thrive, the non-existent mental health program devised by, again, your teammate, Bill de Blasio. You never criticized him or his wife. $1.25 billion spent in 5 years. We've seen no results. That program gets disbanded. It will not continue when I'm mayor. The Department of Education, $33 billion. And the teachers are not seeing the money. Teachers have to reach into their pockets to pay for supplies of children. There is total bureaucratic control at the Department of Education. Nobody seems to know what these overpaid bureaucrats do. Give more control to the principals, more control to the teachers who are taking care of our most precious gift, the children of our city. And I would like you right now acknowledge that you would disband Thrive if you happen to be elected mayor of the city of New York, because you've never criticized it because it was the program of Bill de Blasio and his wife.
I want to get this right, this one statement you made. You're saying you would cut the Department of Education budget, the public school budget?
Oh, I would filter the money that they waste at the top into the classrooms for the teachers, for the principals, to educate the children, because most of that money gets spent in the bureaucracy, swallowed up into that vortex.
Are you pledging not to raise taxes if you're elected mayor?
I'm in fact pledging to reduce taxes. You know how? No congestion pricing, which will crush the middle class coming in from Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens.
We're going to talk about that in a second.
And get rid of the speed cameras. That's a hidden tax.
Thank you, Mr. SLIWA. We're going to talk about that in a few seconds. I'd like to have each of you ask a question of the other person. Anything you want. Mr. SLIWA, you can ask Mr. Adams a question about anything. And you have a minute to answer, Mr. Adams, and vice versa.
Eric Adams, I make many campaign stops a day amongst Republicans. Bill Ritter, I just have to offer just a correction. I am the Republican candidate, but also the independent party candidate that many people will vote for me for mayor on.
My mistake, and I'm sorry.
All right, and when I'm talking to these groups, I tell them, and if the voters determine that Eric Adams should be the mayor of the city of New York, I will give you my total support, because we need to save this city from the brink of fiscal collapse and crime. Would you return the same sentiment if the voters elect me the next mayor. Would you give me your full support?
I do not support human beings. I support the position.
So you would support me in the effort to save our city from your friend, your partner, Bill de Blasio, who single-handedly has destroyed this city that we love, with your help.
I think we can go on to Mariella.
Okay, Mariella.
I'm going to talk about the weather. I'll start with you, Mr. SLIWA. In days like today with heavy rain, there's a serious concern about flooding in illegal basement apartments. As you know, they affect minority communities more than most. At least 11 people died from Ida in basement apartments. The city has an estimated 50,000 illegal units. So would you shut them down if you were elected? And where will you put the people that live there? We're talking about 100,000 residents that live currently in those settings.
It's clear that illegally subdivided basements or illegally constructed apartments are the responsibility of the landlord, the superintendent, or the building manager. They are breaking the law and risking people's lives. That must be stopped, but we can't just kick people out. We have to find them housing. Some of these basement apartments can meet the specifications, but my opponent, Eric Adams, has that same problem. He claims to live in that basement apartment on Lafayette and Bed-Stuy. The Department of Buildings has put up notices, Eric, I don't know, you haven't taken them off the door, that says that you have built an illegal subdivided basement apartment that you claim to live in. Why not answer the Department of Buildings?
To the question then.
Orders to you to stop and desist.
Sir, would you shut them down then? Would you shut them down then? Those
Eventually, yes, but first find the landlords and the people responsible for housing these people in inhumane condition.
Without understanding the complexities of aggravating our housing crisis we have right now.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Would you go after the Dracula landlords who put these people in peril? Would you lock them up? Would you fine them, Eric Adams? No, because they're your supporters.
Mr. SLIWA.
Bill, I'm glad you brought up the seawall. Not just for Lower Manhattan, the Battery, and the financial district. Not one brick, no mortar has been laid. We got all the money after Superstorm Sandy in 2012. Haven't spent a penny to actually build a wall. And on Staten Island, from the Verrazano Bridge, as you go along the East Shore, was supposed to be 5.5 miles. That whole area was underwater. Not one brick, no mortar. People don't trust politicians because they never built those seawalls. I don't trust politicians because they get the money and then they don't spend it. Those walls need to go up because another Superstorm Sandy is on its way. As mayor, I promise you, residents of Staten Island and those of you in the Battery and in the financial district, the wall will be constructed as the money was given to us by the federal government to do, and our local officials have done nothing.
So you will build that wall. Thank you, Mr.
Absolutely.
SLIWA. David?
Mr. SLIWA, let's turn to the issue of homelessness. In the last few years, I think it's fair to say it's become a crisis in New York. My question is, for those of us who our heart goes out to these people, what do you do about that? And on the other hand, many, many New Yorkers don't want to see them camping out on our streets. What do you do?
Well, all you got to do, Dave, is look at my track record working with the emotionally disturbed and the homeless for 42 years as leader of the Guardian Angels. We've been out in the streets tending to their needs, getting them food and clothing, these lost souls. And the answer of de Blasio and his horrible director of homeless services, Stephen Banks, that my opponent, Eric Adams, said, oh, he's doing an excellent job. I would keep him on if I'm elected mayor. 80 shelters shoved into neighborhoods, no transparency, no services for the homeless. They have to get in by 10 o'clock at night. They're kicked out the door. They cause all kinds of problems as a result. We are not compassionate. We are not caring. I would like you, Eric Adams, to condemn your partner and your teammate, Bill de Blasio, for the worst of the many worst programs he's conducted. And please say you're not going to hire Steve Banks if you're lucky enough to get elected mayor.
Mr. SLIWA,
excuse me, Eric, there are empty hotels in Manhattan, some that are boarded up. The only time you come to Manhattan of late is to go to this Euro Bond Club late at night, that private club where you get wine, dined, and pocket lined by a lot of these people who own those hotels. You're going to stick more homeless people in Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx, and exempt Manhattan? Come on, that's tricknology, Eric. We know what the deal is. You even said those hotels in the outer boroughs were built to be shelters. You deny saying that, Eric? You deny it because you said it. Come on, don't use any tricknology here. I'm too street smart for that.
Gentlemen, I want to ask you about the current mayor. Mayor de Blasio has been in office for nearly 7 years and 10 months. Direct questions. What do you think have been his biggest successes, his biggest failures? And if you were a teacher, what grade would you give him? Let's start with Mr. SLIWA. Yes, sir.
Is there a grade below D-? F. The guy has been a miserable failure. He has single-handedly taken a Miley Cyrus wrecking ball to the city that we love. When he marches in the streets, he gets booed. When he goes to Prospect Park for 2 hours a day to basically walk around with his own fellow residents from Park Slope, very liberal and progressive, were booing him, catcalling him. So where did he retreat to? Greenwood, the cemetery nearby.
I just want to make it clear. What is his biggest success and what's his biggest failure?
Best success pre-K, right out of the box. I was a quarter of that. After that, it's been all downhill. I can't wait till he leaves us and goes back to Cambridge because he has destroyed this city.
Thank you.
And he's been your partner.
Mr. Adams.
You partnered up with him, Eric Adams, for 8 years.
Mr.
You've
Adams,
been a part of that.
What grade would you give the mayor after nearly 7 years and 10 months? And what's his biggest success and biggest failure?
Well, knowing how important education is, I say this all the time, if you don't educate, you'll incarcerate. What he has done with pre-K and 3K laid the groundwork of what I would like to build on, because I believe education is pregnancy through profession. I think that was a real success. And I will also look at the municipal ID program. Many people were not accessing services because they did not have proper identification. If I were to look at where I believe we could have done better, clearly homelessness. I believe we could have done a better job with homelessness and finding inefficiencies in our agencies. Cities are based on the success of agencies. With 2 silos, we're hemorrhaging too much money, and I want to turn that around. And I would give him a B+ as a grade.
So we have a B+.
Did you say B+?
We have a B+ and an F. Thank you, gentlemen.
Social promotion at its worst.
All right, thank you, Mr.
This guy's been
SLIWA.
a disaster, and you've been his partner. You've been his teammate.
Dave Evans, you have the next.
Disaster in Brooklyn.
Thank you, Mr. SLIWA.
Let's talk about congestion pricing. We learned with recent MTA hearings that the price of driving south of 60th Street is going to be anywhere from $9 to $35 if by chance you don't have an Easy Pass. Do you accept that simply as the cost of driving south of 60th? Mr. SLIWA, you certainly don't.
That's a tax against all those who live in the outer boroughs and north of 60th Street. And by the way, Eric Adams, you want to improve mass transit in the city, subways and buses? How about stopping fare evasion? All the money that's not being paid to take the fare. And by the way, Eric Adams proposed free fare for subways and buses. Eric, how would you possibly financially support free fare for subways and buses when the system can't even support itself? It's hemorrhaging money because you don't want to stop, ticket, or arrest fare evaders.
Okay, very on.
To answer the question,
Mr.
Eric, you want
SLIWA.
free fare, right, for the subways and buses?
Mr. SLIWA, we'll continue with taxi drivers, sir. A question for you right now. As you know, they have taken a huge hit during the pandemic. An industry already crippled with app-based ride-sharing competition. Medallion owners right now are protesting with a hunger strike, demanding more debt relief. They don't think that the current plan from City Hall to give drivers 29,000 loans, free interest loans, are enough. What is your plan to help them? They're protesting right now as we speak.
Well, the yellow cabs are outside of City Hall as we speak on hunger strike. I have spoken to them. They wonder where you've been, Eric Adams. I guess with all your travels, you haven't had a chance to talk to them. But I will tell you this, you have to bifurcate this. There are the oligarchs, the Russian and Ukrainian oligarchs who own dozens of medallions. You don't bail them out. And your newfound friend, Michael Cohen, that's right, you know, you were going to meet him.
So what will be your plan, sir?
He has dozens of medallions. No to them and sit down with the individual owners and operators with the medallions and see how we can make them whole. That's what I would do as mayor. But no to the oligarchs who have destroyed the yellow cab industry.
smaller medallion owners.
You both agree on something a little bit.
Well, yeah.
Both agreeing there.
Well, he
About your
came around
newfound
to
friend
agree.
Michael Cohen. You were going to meet with him and Kanye West. Michael Cohen owns quite a few medallions. Did you know that, Eric?
Let me talk about something else that's sprung up in the city that is, some people think it's fantastic and is exciting, and other people say it could be problematic. We're talking about outdoor dining. It has sparked excitement, yes, but some say it's also an unsafe condition on the streets. Bike lanes intersecting with waiters coming, trying to serve food and cutting off an entire lane of traffic, which has caused some problems. And some people sitting with plywood between them and oncoming cars. If you're elected, would you keep outdoor dining? Mr. SLIWA, would you keep outdoor dining?
Bill, I look at some of these Quonset huts, these airplane hangars. You could actually park a 747 in there. That's ridiculous. Others that are unused, that have become shooting galleries where people with drugs are actually shooting up in their necks. They've got to go. And by the way, the reason that so many of the bars and restaurant owners need them is because of the vaccine passport. The ridiculousness that I have to show a vaccine passport to go indoors at a restaurant and then personal ID. I just went to vote with my wife Nancy on Saturday. You didn't have to show a vaccine passport. You didn't have to show an ID. But to get a cheeseburger and fries, you got to show a vaccine passport and ID. That is crazy. And as a result, diners end up going to New Jersey, Westchester, Connecticut, Long Island, where they don't have to show a vaccine passport or ID.
Okay, thank you.
Is the air different, Bill? Is the air different in New York City than it is in the tri-state area? This is ridiculous.
All right, let's move to the next round. David, you've got the question.
Mr. SLIWA, we have found since the pandemic began that more and more people are biking than ever before in New York City. Yet you have talked about eliminating bike lanes. Why?
Well, not eliminate. Basically, look at them. Many of these bike lanes have been up a year or more. If you use it, you keep it. Many people have used the bicycle lanes well. But there are vast areas of our city, especially in the southern ends when you go into Brooklyn and Queens and northern Bronx and most of Staten Island where they haven't used it at all.
But that would be eliminated. Why not promote in those areas?
Well, they have been promoted. They're just not using it, so you take it back. But I can understand why Eric Adams would want to be riding his bicycles when you have 14 reckless endangerment tickets for speeding through school zones. Maybe, Eric, it's better if you just stay on your bicycle and get away from behind the wheel. So I promote you bicycling and not driving a car. Because normally under those circumstances, they seize your vehicle, which is recently what you said. They should seize vehicle.
We are running out of time. We want to give you 1 minute of closing arguments, so I have a couple quick questions for you. First, this has been not a great campaign. I assume you're not going to send each other holiday cards come December. Could you say something nice about your opponent? And let's start with Mr. Adams.
The cats. I take my hat off to Curtis, what he's doing with cats. I think we need to be humane to all living beings, and that's include our animals. And as a person that believes it's important that we show compassion to each other and to our animals. And so I commend him for what he's doing around cats.
Mr. SLIWA, you have the opportunity.
I commend Eric, who I've known for years. I had a much friendlier time between the both of us. And his promotion of the vegan way of life to avoid serious medical issues has probably already helped dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of people. So I applaud you for that, because I have seen the results of people who end up dying and suffering and in pain because they get caught with all kinds of problems, diabetes, high blood pressure, high tension. As someone who has been in the hospital many, many times, I hope one day to be a vegan. I'm working on my way. My wife Nancy is getting me there, Erica. I'm like at the vegetarian stage.
It's very nice to see both of you laughing and also be gentle and kind to each other. I appreciate that. Quick question. Are there any commissioners or anyone else in the administration of Mr. de Blasio you would like to keep if you were elected mayor? Mr. SLIWA, you have that first.
Absolutely not. Clean sweep. Out they go. They're fired because they are de Blasioites.
Also, what would surprise people, and again, about 15 seconds for each answer, what would surprise people most about you? Mr. Adams, you start first.
I watch 5 Heartbeats all the time, and I cry every time at the end of the movie. I'm just a softie when it comes down to movies.
Mr. SLIWA.
Electronic dance music. I'm 67 years. I love electronic dance music. It is my mood elevator. I listen to it as soon as I get back from the subways and the streets and campaigning. EDM, electronic dance music.
There you go. Your top priority, one single top priority, if you got elected, 10 seconds each. Mr. SLIWA.
Be able to choose a police commissioner who is from the department, not outside the department, and interview Latinos and Latinas who never get interviewed for that position.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. It is time now for closing statements. You each have 1 minute, and by the rules, we begin with Mr. SLIWA.
Ustedes me conocen. That means you know me for 42 years. And what I will bring to City Hall is compassion and caring, which has not existed from either of the political parties. And as Eric had mentioned, I am the first candidate to say when elected there will be no kill shelters. We're not killing any dogs or cats or animals again. It was Mahatma Gandhi who said, a society that does not take care of its animals does not take care of its people. Look at the emotionally disturbed. Look at the homeless. We've got to show compassion and caring and void out what de Blasio has done. And I only would have wished you would have used your bully pulpit, Eric, to criticize Thrive and all these other programs that have done nothing but make the problems worse. I guarantee you, I swear on my parents' grave, I will not forsake these lost souls or the animals in our community. We will no longer kill them in our shelters.